All right, so thank you for joining us. I see we have just a few people coming in now. We're going to give it just a few more minutes to let people get to the room, and then we'll be getting started. Hi, Shawnee.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good, good. Thanks for asking.
I'm glad to hear. Okay. So I just sent you a message. We're just, because of how many registered, I'm just giving a few extra minutes so people can kind of roll in.
No problem.
Thank you for your patience. All righty. So it's about 6:05. So we not a lot of people have rolled in yet, Shawnee. But if you're ready to get ready and get started, then I'm ready.
So I'm open to waiting.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I can kind of get to know Ann and Raven
Okay.
as we wait. Ann, do you want to share what you're doing in the cannabis space and where you're located? If you have gotten your license yet and where you are in the stage of your business? Oh, wait, are they able to share?
Anne should be. I am allowing Raven now. So yes, you guys want to go ahead and come off mute. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to, but definitely come off mute or answer the questions via chat because it is a very interactive webinar. So this time frame with Shawnee, who is a wealth of knowledge, is for your benefit. So it's going to be best if you're able to answer those personal questions so she can kind of give you information that is like pointed towards you and what your current situation is in the cannabis industry. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So go ahead and whenever you're ready.
Okay, can anyone hear me? Is that working?
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I didn't think that camera had a microphone. I'm sorry. I would have just plugged that in to begin with. That's been my whole struggle around here today. Hi, so I am currently living in Minnesota. I work for a medical cannabis dispensary up here, but my sister is going in for a license in Illinois for growth and infusion, and then a separate for infusion, and I'll be coming on board with her.
Got it. Did she have her license and is up and running?
Not yet. The license is in LOI approval right now.
Okay, awesome. Raven, what line of business are you in the industry? Where are you located? And where are you at in your process?
Yes. Hi, my name is Raven Terrell. I'm located here in Chicago, and we have a transportation company, and we were granted our license last July, at the end of last July. So where we are now is we're just pretty much, since basically like everything was still like delayed with as far as like the dispensary licensing and all of that stuff, where we submitted for the loan that they came out with last September. So we're waiting to hear back from that. And so we're just pretty much trying to do our back end work right now. We just connected with an attorney a couple of weeks ago, and just trying to get up and running, basically.
Okay. Did you guys have to pay the licensing fee, or are they holding off on that?
Yes, we paid our licensing fee because we had to pay our licensing fee in order to apply for the loan. You had to have your license already paid for. So we went and did that. Like I said, we submitted our loan application back in September. So we paid for our license around August, the first or second week of August, after we got the notification letter. Literally, I believe we got our notification like July 28th, or like very, very close to the end of the month.
Okay. Okay. I don't think Janelle has the ability to speak. But Janelle, we are just trying to introduce everyone and see where everyone is in their business. If you would like to share, just tell us where your business is going to be located, where you're from, what line of the cannabis industry are you going to be in, what vertical, and where you are in your process.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm Janelle Cunningham. I am in Danville, Illinois. I am very new to the process. I am beginning stages. I just moved back to Danville, Illinois. And what I hope to do is I want to open a cafe with infused marijuana products.
And then last but not least, we have Paula. Paula, do you want to share anything about your company, where you guys are located, where you are in the process, and what license you are seeking?
Hi, I'm a TREP employee. I'm just here to support Ms. K. Hi,
okay. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Cool. Well, I guess we can get started. And then if people hop on, then we can see if they would like to share. But I am, as Kay already said, I am very, very interactive. I prefer engagement because I need to understand that people are kind of picking up the content that I'm providing. And I want to make sure everyone's understanding. And also, if you have follow-up questions, I want to make sure that I'm answering them. So all that to say, you can cut me off, turn off your mic, ask me questions if we get to a point where you just have a burning question to ask, or I'm actually looking at the chat on a regular basis. Like I usually have the chat sitting right in front of me. So you can, if you're more of a typer, you can also type your questions in the chat. So yes, I just wanted to kind of put that out there before we get started. So this particular session, last session we did recruiting and retaining talent. This session is going to be about human resources and payroll. And this is a form of technical assistance through the TREP school provided by the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for the state of Illinois. So just a little bit about me. My name is Shawnee Williams. I am a human resources certified professional, and I own a company called Illinois Equity Staffing. So Illinois Equity Staffing is a WBE MBE certified HR company. We're located in Chicago, but we actually provide services across the US in human resources. That's including talent acquisition and employee development and training in the cannabis and hemp space. I am the chair of the Human Resources Committee for the National Cannabis Industry Association. I also, our company is also members of Chicago NORML, Illinois Women in Cannabis, SEEN, and a bunch of other organizations, BIPOCAN, MCBA, things like that. Thank you. I don't know who is TS, is that UK? Yes, got it. Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate it. So the main thing that we focus on, we're Black owned, female owned. The main thing we focus on is promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the space through our lane, and our lane is human resources. So anything having to do with human resources, we try to focus on ways to promote DEI work in the cannabis space with anything that's related to human resources. I think that's all I got about me. As far as human resources is concerned, does anyone want to take a crack at the question that's on the screen? The question is, what is human resources or people operations? Anyone want to take a...
That's so funny because I actually work in human resources and I don't know the official answer for that. So that's
okay. What are some things, what do you, so not official answer, what would you say are some of the definitions that you would give? Unofficial.
I would say my team pretty much services the company as a whole from an internal and an external standpoint. We're very service oriented, meaning when things need to be done, we often are on the back end making sure we are compliant and pretty much supporting the company.
That's a good definition. Anyone else? I know it's boring. Human resources is very boring. Only human resources nerds get excited about stuff like this.
I'm excited.
But
so I'll take a crack at it. I said, I'm excited. I'll take a crack at it. So I would say human resources is basically the the heart of most organizations, because that's where the higher level or executives set their understanding of what they're looking for to make the mission statement and the goal of the company true. So that's where we actually pull in the individuals that are able to perform the services that we need to be performed to actually reach what the company's goal would be.
That's also a really good definition. So a lot of people kind of see HR in one way, and it's depending on, you know, whatever aspects that they've come across HR in. So a lot of people only think about their paycheck, you know, payroll. Some people think of the fun part, which is like talent acquisition and recruiting. Some people only think about like the really boring or stuffy part, or the mundane paperwork, or even the disciplinary actions that come with human resources. So I used to work for a really large Fortune 500 company, and I will never forget this. Even to this day, we had a nickname for our HR generalist. Unfortunately, the whole team called her the Dark Cloud. And looking back on that, I'm like, that is so sad. Like, to be that person in the organization, because you're the HR generalist, when you pop up, when people see you, they know something has been done wrong and someone's going to get in trouble. And it's sad that people see it like that, because your team really in your business should be like the most important aspect of your business. That same company that I worked for had a motto, and the motto was, if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers, and then your profits and your growth will automatically follow. And it sounds corny, but it's actually true. And I would go even further to say that that's where the cannabis industry is messing up, really just following the status quo of corporate America, unfortunately. But we have the opportunity to kind of make things a little bit different in this industry, just given the makeup of the industry. Does anyone know what the Great Resignation is?
That's pretty much the turnover rate is super high right now. It's like an employees market out here versus an employer's market.
100%. That is correct, Raven. So the term was coined, I believe, last year to describe what is currently happening in America. It's almost a play off of the Great Migration of obviously Black Americans from the South up to the North and to the West. And so the Great Resignation is happening right now. Basically, people are leaving the workplace in droves. And it's the highest, I guess, occurrences of people leaving the workplace than ever before in American history. Does anyone want to know or want to kind of guess why that's happening right now?
As a proud member of someone who performed in the Great Migration to find new opportunities, I would say the biggest reason is, especially with what happened with the pandemic, it put a lot of strain on whether an individual had a family or they were a single person, but just how the company took care of them during what is definitely a national disaster and a shutdown. And the expectation of keeping certain company goals while the world wasn't normal, that would be the main reason that people made the decision to leave. I moved all the way from Las Vegas to Chicago to take a federal position and a second position instead of keeping the position that I had. So I split myself 2 times in order to not deal with a certain employer.
Wow. And there you go. That's a perfect explanation. In all honesty, it's just not making financial sense for a lot of employees. Employers want these master's degrees and they only want to pay between 40 and 65,000, which isn't sustainable with people that have student loans. You want to throw bills and then childcare and actually taking care of your children outside of childcare into the mix. And what's the point? What's the point of working for someone? The pandemic has basically showed working Americans that they could have a better state of mind, staying home and pursuing a business or a hobby of their own. And there's a mass exodus of a lot of healthcare workers as well as teachers all over the world, honestly, because the paycheck just isn't worth the stress anymore. And so you're probably like, what's the point? What are you getting at? Well, your payroll in any business that you have, whether it's the cannabis industry or not, is going to be your largest expense on your P&L. But a lot of employers refuse to keep that same energy when it comes to human resources, right? So in the cannabis industry, turnover is 40 to 60%. It's ridiculous in the cannabis industry. That means that about 40 to 60%, or on average, 50% of a company in the cannabis industry's headcount is being replaced on an annual average. That's a lot. And then just to kind of put it into a bigger perspective, when we're talking about replacing employees or having to rehire someone because someone else has left or been fired, it typically costs, for entry-level people, $3,500 to $7,000 to replace that person. And we're talking about trying to source and recruit that person, the hours that are being put into that by the recruiter or the person that probably should be focusing on something else. Onboarding that person, training them, all that good stuff, getting them acclimated to the point where they're able to work autonomously. That costs a company a lot of money. And it's your biggest expense, but yet we're not treating it as important as it should be treated. So the official definition, according to SHRM, of human resources is the act of managing human resources, talent acquisition, total rewards, performance management, and employment law, and employee and learning development. So those 6 aspects really make up what we consider human resources. Typically, as the company gets bigger, you start to see teams that focus on just one of these things. But starting out a business, you got one person that's focusing on all of this. Most people really only pay attention to talent acquisition and compensation, which is just a really small part of total rewards. Like, compensation is just like a sliver of total rewards, and we're not looking at the big picture. And that can get you in a lot of trouble. So like I said, we covered talent acquisition and recruiting last session. So in this session, we're going to talk about the other 5 topics. And those are also housed, like I said, under human resources. So I'm going to cover really quickly employment law. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but as far as US and Illinois laws are concerned, just a really quick overview. This isn't everything, but Illinois minimum wage is $12 an hour. The plan is to increase $1 an hour so that by 2025, we're at $15 an hour. Cook County minimum wage is $13 an hour if you have 21 or more employees. Chicago minimum wage is $15 an hour if you have 21 or more employees. Now, if you have 4 to 20 employees, your minimum wage in Chicago would be $14 an hour. In Illinois, if you have any employee who works 7.5 hours, they have to be given a meal break of at least 20 minutes. And your meal breaks can't be given to an employee past their 5-hour mark. So, if you have a team, usually this happens in service work, especially with a workforce that's young, that doesn't know what's going on. They don't know the laws, but they'll give that person their break, especially if it's like a double or something. They'll give them the break 8 hours into the shift, and it's like, that is actually illegal. Illinois is an at-will state, and I have an asterisk there because a lot of people like to throw that in employees' faces. We already talked about the Great Resignation, so I would suggest that if you are going to be running a team, that you don't throw that in employees' face, because it is a candidate's market right now. But at the same time, Illinois is moving more and more progressively towards what I would say are California laws. And so there may be a point in time where at will is not the case for Illinois. And they are starting to make exceptions to the rule. Just because you've stated that you're an at-will employer and it's an at-will state doesn't mean that the nature of your dismissal of an employee was legal. If you have more than 5 employees, you must accommodate breastfeeding mothers to take extra breaks to nurse or pump. Non-competes I think this is a recent law, non-competes in Illinois are not enforceable for people who are being paid under $75,000. I cannot tell you how many times I have had try to throw in a non-compete in an employment agreement, and the person isn't even making that much money. So they have to be making $75,000 or more for you to throw in a non-compete clause. In Illinois, we do have sexual harassment training that must be completed annually for all employers. The US requires employers with 50 or more employees to allow FMLA leave unpaid up to 12 weeks. If you have less than 50 employees, that doesn't mean that you can't offer that, but you aren't required by law. If your company has not unionized, especially in the cannabis industry, because cannabis will probably move into a unionized industry very soon, you're still subject to the National Labor Relations Act. That means that your employees are allowed to form a labor union. You can't do anything about it. They can discuss collective bargaining, and they can negotiate workplace conditions and salary. Anyone working over 40 hours a week should be paid 1.5 times their hourly rate. And the whistleblower law does protect your employees if they report your company for violating any laws. If anyone hasn't watched The Dropout on Hulu, I would suggest you watch it. The whistleblower is what blew that whole thing wide open. You are responsible for keeping your workplace safe for all of your employees. And if for any reason you don't, your employees can report your company anonymously on the OSHA website. Does anyone have any questions about that? Cool. So what happens the day you hire a new employee? Hopefully you have an internal standard operating procedure for hiring new team members. Some people call it a checklist or onboarding checklist or anything, something like that. Typically there's an offer letter, right? And then the new hire paperwork. New hire paperwork will typically include employee filing or filling out their I-9 and their W-4. In the state of Illinois, you also have to do what we call a new hire report, and you have to submit it within 20 days of hiring the person. And this report just goes to the Department of Employment Security. When it comes to calculating how much needs to be set aside for your employer payroll taxes, you guys will have federal unemployment, which is, we call it FUTA, and then state unemployment, which is SUTA, Social Security, and Medicare. And that's not even including benefits, right? So just with the employees' pay, we would have to add another 16.225% on top of that just for our employer taxes. So if you're paying someone, $50,000, you're probably going to be paying an additional few thousand on top of that for your taxes. Their taxes will come out of the 50. You want to find a payroll provider that's going to work with a cannabis company. As we get closer and closer to federal legalization, more companies are becoming less, strict, and they're allowing cannabis companies. I am vehemently against it. The companies that weren't accepting cannabis companies 2-3 years ago should just stay out of the industry, but that's just my personal opinion. But there are cannabis-friendly payroll providers that have always been cannabis-friendly payroll providers. You also want to get workers' compensation insurance as soon as possible, just to protect yourself and to protect your employees. So total rewards. What is total rewards and why is it important? Does anyone want to answer that question? Anybody? Bueller? Okay, total rewards is not only compensation, but it's also employee perks and benefits. And if you design your program well enough, it'll motivate your employees to perform well within the company. So we all know base pay, that's the one that everyone talks about. That's wage or salary, depending on the employee. If you have an exempt employee, those are the ones that are entitled to overtime pay. So those are typically folks who are salaried employees. And then you have your non-exempt folks who are typically your hourly employees, and they're entitled to overtime pay. This gets left out a lot, and it's incentive-based pay. So you have your base, but you could also have incentive-based pay. Imagine building a comp plan every year, and you have a company goal. And I've actually worked for companies like this, and the productivity is higher, I will say. You have a company goal in mind, and everyone knows it. And if the goal is met, all employees, every single one, receives a bonus based on their role in the company, how senior they are, how long they've been with the company, and things like that. It could be revenue contingent. It could be contingent on growth. You set the goal. You let the goal be known to the entire organization, and then everyone's working towards that goal and gets a bonus if you meet that goal. That does boost productivity and sometimes innovation. You can also offer departmental and individual incentives as well. Individual typically works really well for sales folks, but this is going to require you to really lean in on performance management, meaning if you have individual goals, you have to have some sort of evaluation and performance plan in place to keep up with your employees and making sure you document performance, whether it's not up to par or if it's exceeding expectations. I will just be honest, cannabis companies are not doing a good job at any of that I just mentioned. So we have a lot of room for improvement. Benefits are indirect rewards that your employees receive by being a member of the organization. They typically aren't performance-based, but they can be. This is around the time someone here will ask me about how much they should pay their employee. So what I'm going to do is put a cannabis compensation report in the chat. So this is from 2021, National Cannabis Industry Association. And it's just a PDF compensation report. It'll go through the ranges of like certain positions within the cannabis industry. And it was based on a survey. Raven?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Thank you. Let's see. You see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll get to see, what people said that they're getting paid and what role they were in. It was, like I said, it's a survey. So, they do a mid, a high, and a low because we all, are living in different states and things like that. So it'll kind of give you an idea of where people fall as far as what their role is in an organization. So you can use that as reference. Now, there's 3 different pay strategies that most employers can take when it comes to compensating their employees. There's the lag method, the match method, and the lead method. Those terms that I just used are how you refer to what you're doing in comparison to your competition. So do you lag in compensation in comparison to your competition? Do you match your competition, or are you the one leading the pack in compensation? If you're lagging in compensation, you save a little bit money, and that can be used on other benefits or on other parts of the business. A lot of startup businesses and businesses that don't have a lot of working capital will use this strategy because of economic reasons. If you decide to do the match strategy, which is really most common, you're competing well with the competition, and you have a pretty good shot at getting pretty good talent. And then last, if you're leading competition, then your strategy is to attract, the best the best talent in the market. Benefits, obviously, this is not everything, but some benefits are health insurance, dental, vision, commuter reimbursement, 401k, life insurance, employee recognition, employee engagement. meaning employee resource organizations or resource groups, engagement surveys, town halls. That's really like creating the togetherness of the organization, especially if you have a mixture of remote and in-person workers. Health and wellness benefits, HSA, FSA, volunteer time off, charity match. Those are just a few different types of benefits that companies can provide their employees to almost add to their overall total rewards. So pay grades. This is where it gets muddy, and this is where a lot of people fall off, and it can cost you a lot of money, and it could even cost you a lawsuit. So you want to start early in your organization with pay grades and pay ranges. I cannot tell you how many organizations I've worked with where I've said, you probably need to start doing a compensation analysis because your team is starting to grow really, really fast, and you're paying people kind of like very arbitrarily, and you're going to get yourself in trouble. They never listen, and then it gets out of control. You will end up with a situation if you don't do a compensation analysis where you have managers making less than their own employees that they're managing. It happens, and it happens very easily. Establishing a pay range will set your upper and lower limits of your compensation for employees who fall within a pay grade. So you have pay grades, and then for each pay grade, you have a pay range, which is like the low, mid, and the high. We typically try to tell employers to overlap the pay ranges on pay grades so that an experienced person in a lower grade job may get paid more than an inexperienced person in a person that's in a grade higher than them. And so let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is like a graph to kind of explain what I'm saying. You see pay grade 1, excuse me, I'm sorry, pay grade A and pay grade 2 overlap with that max of 1125 and that minimum of 925. So the 1125 is the mid for pay grade B. So that's how you typically want to do it. You'll also notice that your lower level jobs have a narrower range, which you can see in this graph. So, and that makes sense. When you have an entry-level person come on, they have nowhere to go but up in your organization anyways. And they're probably going to stay entry-level for a short period of time. When you have employees who are being paid above the maximum rate, you have to find a way to adjust that, whether that be giving them a promotion or making them ineligible for salary increases so that when you increase everyone else catches up to them. The point is to never have this happen. But if you don't organize from the beginning with your pay grades and your pay rates, this will happen 100%. It will happen. So we have two different terms that we use for folks who lie within the, that lie below the pay range and lie above the pay range. So we call the folks who lie above the red circle folks. And then if you range, those are called green circle. Correct this, just like you would have to find a way, folks. The only time that so how will you pay increases and promotions in your organization? There's a few different ways that we kind of talk about increasing pay. How do you get someone from mid-range to high range? There's merit increase. Merit is usually based on performance. So you typically want to set a frequency for when you assess a merit increase. Most companies do annually. I can tell you right now, the cannabis companies don't do any of it. So you could choose an anniversary hire date. You can choose a calendar year, or you can just choose the last date of their last annual review and then start doing your merit-based increases. Step increase in pay is another form of pay increase. This one's most common, especially used in the government. It's just step increase related to like length of service within the company. And then you can also mix merit and step increases in a combination. Another common increase is the promotion increase, which is obviously self-explanatory. Then you have across the board increase. Across the board is where everyone in the organization gets a certain percentage or a certain amount increase. And then your cost of living adjustment, it's a similar situation. Typically they'll do like 3% for cost of living increase, but it's just another example of across the board pay increase. Benefits. So the statistic I have here is that 49% of employees will leave their organization in the next 12 months because of lack of benefits. Benefits like paid time off and unpaid time off have become so common that companies that don't offer them will have a difficult time attracting and retaining their talent. So there are a lot of trends that you need to be mindful of as a business owner as you begin to craft your own benefits program. And it's going to, obviously, you're going to be thinking about cost effectiveness. Can your company afford these benefits? But the first thing that I want to talk about that's very relevant right now in the US is healthcare cost containment. So healthcare costs in the US are, we all know, out of hand. A lot of employers, what they're doing is reducing the number of choices. In fact, I remember probably like in my 20s, we had like 3 different options for, benefit plans. Now you're lucky if you have 3 different options. It's definitely a privilege to be an organization that has like 3 different options to choose from. So a lot of employers are reducing their number of choices, and some of them are reducing their contribution to the overall premium for the employee. This really is a way for employers to be more cost conscious and to also make their employees more cost conscious. A lot of the plans that will be made available to you and your teams will definitely make your employees think twice. And it will make them actually make smarter healthcare decisions, like seeking low cost providers, or even instead of going to the emergency room, going to urgent care. Another trend that we're seeing right now in benefits is the demand for work-life balance, for obvious reasons. We all know why. And that looks different for everyone. Some, back office people want to be able to work from home a few days out of the week. Many customer-facing employees don't want to spend every waking moment at work. If you're seeing a lot of overtime on your payroll, it's probably time that you need to add another person to the headcount instead of making all your employees work overtime week after week after week. There's another trend that we're seeing, and it's an uptick in almost like preventative health and wellness programs. So, and that comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, just depending on the organization and the makeup of the workforce. It's like an effort to combat the significant increase in preventable and chronic health conditions in your workforce. So, for example, we've seen everything from smoking cessation programs, stress management programs, weight management, screening programs, education, and even classes. Like I worked for a company that would pay a yoga instructor to come in, I think once or twice a month, to do yoga class in the office. And even flu shots, bringing like a vendor to the office or to the facility to do flu shots. Those are the types of preventative health and wellness programs that a lot of companies are doing. And that's considered an added benefit, and it goes with the total compensation and rewards program in your organization. Now, your younger people in your workforce, they're going to have one of 2 or both concerns. One is going to be like childcare. What benefits, if any, are being offered for childcare? and tuition reimbursement. So you do come off a little bit more attractive if you offer any or both of those, if you're looking for younger talent. I just want to add that with younger talent, sometimes as well, you have a little bit more flexibility with salary, depending on how young we're talking. So that's another thing you want to keep in mind as well. You have to understand that the more you take care of your team, the more they're going to take care of your company. And like I said, I know that sounds corny, but it's true. And I just want to like give one of my employees situations as an example. I have an employee that does not want to stay in the cannabis industry. And I understand that. I can definitely understand that, because sometimes the cannabis industry want to make you hurt somebody. But she has a desire to be a doula, right? So for me, she works from home. And I work with her schedule. So if she wants to do some recruiting for me at night instead of during the day, because she's going to be visiting with one of her clients who's pregnant, I have no qualms with that. That is absolutely fine. In fact, when I learned that she enrolled in her certification program, I sent her a book that's called The Cannabis Doula. So like for me, as an employer, I am aware that, my employees don't necessarily have the same dream that I do. Some of them don't want to be recruiters for the rest of their lives. And I can understand that and respect it. And as long as they feel comfortable in the workplace and they're feeling supported in the workplace, their productivity is going to be high. So Kay added, I would add healthcare reimbursement and options to the mix of those top tier employer benefit options. I agree. Healthcare reimbursement is great. HSA and FSA is really great as well. I don't see it as much in the Midwest as I did when I was living on the West Coast, but FSA and HSA is great. Some other benefits: life insurance, pension, casual dress day. Who would guess that that's considered a benefit? Flexible work, growth opportunities, scholarship programs, connecting with perks. So like I used to work for a company that allowed us like our own login, and we get like percentages off to, amusement parks and movies and things like that. That's a really big deal. Recognition programs. Sometimes companies will allot like each employee like a $25 allowance every quarter to recognize someone in the organization, right? And then that person will take the $25, and this is all within like the platform, this online platform, where they can either save up their recognition and get something, whether that be, like I said, a hotel room or a dinner or a gift card, whatever that may be. And then the platform takes care of all of that. Those are like added perks. Raven said wellness programs are also great. I agree. I've been at a company, these are all different companies, by the way, but I've been at a company where we had they reimbursed us for pedometers, right? And then there was almost like a group employee, I guess you would consider it an employee resource group or an affinity group, I would say an affinity group, where those that did want to kind of interact with everyone that's tracking their steps per day were put into the group, and they got to kind of share, their journey, weight loss, whatever they're doing, some recipes and things like that. Like those are really great perks that don't cost much at all, if anything. And when I say reimbursing, like you don't have to reimburse 100%. You can reimburse 50% of whatever their pedometer up to a certain amount, right? So you don't have to reimburse the whole thing. One thing I want to add here is that we're seeing in the cannabis industry, some employees, because cannabis is federally illegal, some employees and people who work for cannabis companies are having a hard time buying houses, go figure. And so there's an opportunity for employers in the cannabis industry that know they have a workforce that is around the age of adulthood, that's looking to own their own home or properties, to maybe form a partnership with a home loan provider or servicer that would be willing to actually work with people who are working in the cannabis industry. That's like going a step further. It doesn't cost you anything, right? But you've gone a step further knowing, okay, my employees may have a hard time buying a house. And for those that are going to think about buying a house while they're employed here, I want to make sure I've thought about how they're going to be able to secure a loan to finance their home. Little things. It's the little things. Learning and development. 59% of employees, 59%, claim they had no workplace training. Can you imagine what type of message that sends to that employee? What message do you think that sends to your team? You know, if you have a team that didn't receive any type of training, what message does that send to them?
I would say that dictates that you kind of just need a body in a space, and that you don't really have an understanding of what your own mission is, or something that you're trying to present to a customer, if you didn't take the time to train an individual of what you want to represent your company and your product.
100%. You need a warm body, and it shows. You can care less about who it is or where they're going in the future. One of my sisters is a cook. And cooking is interesting because everyone has their own way of doing things within like that particular organization. My sister got hired somewhere, and she was telling me that there were like, it had been like 16 different diets that they cooked for it. And she, you know, this was for a prison. This was the other thing that I was driving. I was like, what? Vegan, vegetarian, halal, kosher. And I'm like, I really feel like if you breaking laws, like you shouldn't have the privilege, you know what I'm saying, of sticking to your diet. Like if you can't follow the law of the land, but you can follow God's law. Like, what are you? I'm confused. Like, I don't understand, right?
I had to mute not to laugh out loud at you, Shawnee.
So I'm talking to her, and I'm like, that's a lot of stuff. And I was like, do you know what that consists of? And she's like, no, I'm sure they'll train us. And so, you know, a few weeks goes by, and sure enough, one of the kosher inmates had submitted a complaint. And so she's telling me like what happened, and she's like, I just don't understand, like, what's the big thing with kosher? And I'm like, you literally have to have a rabbi pray over the food. That's why when you said kosher diet, I was like, how, Sway? Like, how are you going to have a rabbi come to the prison every day? And like, it made no sense to me. But just taking that a little bit of time to train your new team on what makes a diet special and what does it mean to be kosher and halal and vegetarian and vegan, and what beliefs come with that. World of difference, right? It just sends it leaves a bad taste in especially new hires' mouths, because they're like, you obviously don't care anything about me. You don't care anything about your customer or your company if you're not willing to even train your team. So learning and employee development is it's a variety of formal and informal activities. And the whole point is to impart knowledge to the employees to provide them with the right job competencies, and to help them improve their overall job performance. So training is the more formal of the two, and development is a little less formal, right? Those are activities that build on the employees' competencies. Now, the primary goal of your training program as a business is to support the goals of the company, right? So whatever your goals are, your training should almost encompass what it takes to support that. Some things to remember when we're talking about adult learning, right? Adults are not the same as K through 12 learners. Adults want to focus on real world issues. So forget the theory, forget the fluff, like adults don't have anything to do with that. And I always use entrepreneurship as an example of this. Having a business degree does not prepare you to run a business. It prepares you to run someone else's business. And a lot of people don't understand that. So I have, when I'm working with people who, especially legacy market people who are coming from the legacy market into the licensed market, they feel that because they don't have a degree in business that they don't know everything there is to know about business. And some of that is true. All of us are not going to know everything about business and entrepreneurship, but I guarantee you there are more legacy market people that have more hands-on knowledge from experience than people who went to business school. And it's experience that sets them apart. So there are different types of learning styles as well, and you have to take that into account. Some people on the team may be visual learners. And if that is the case, then they learn by seeing content visually to fully understand it. They do really well with like visual displays, diagrams, slide presentations, and even like computer-based simulation training. Now, there are also auditory learners. Those are learners that obviously learn best from hearing things, whether that be like verbal facilitation and workshops, discussions, or even recordings. And then we have our tactile learners. Those are the ones that have to do it or have to be more hands-on in order to really comprehend what they're learning. So when you're developing your training program, you have to have that in mind so that you provide almost like a myriad of learning modalities to fully reach all of your employees and meet them where they are. What do you guys think are some good ways to provide formal training for employees?
Have a handbook ready to read.
Absolutely. So that would be for your, I would say probably visual folks. Anybody else?
I would say set aside time at the initial portion of employment to have like training classes or like on the job experience type of training with someone that they can shadow or someone who is their direct manager that's taking the time to be in that position with them and do the position, show them, and then be there to support them when they perform those same duties.
That is great. I like that. Some other tools when it comes to training would be like icebreakers. That's really getting people comfortable. Workshops, group discussions, case studies. Case studies are really, especially for the cannabis industry, because it's such a new industry. And I think learning from other people's mistakes, especially on the compliance side, is really helpful if you can remember a story from someone else's company. That case study can help you just remember what you need to do in your job on a day-to-day. Role playing, I think is helpful for certain circumstances, but it depends. Like sales, obviously there's a lot of role playing in sales. Scenarios is another. I would say scenarios, in my opinion, scenarios are better than role playing. And then simulations. So I think Kay kind of brought this up, but onboarding is really almost like your first shot at employee training. And the effectiveness of your onboarding program is going to determine basically how happy your employees are, if they're going to stay with the company, meaning your retention rates. Your retention threshold is going to be how long the employee stays with the company before they make an exit, performance measures, and formal and informal feedback. So those are the things that onboarding can affect, or lack thereof. Now, in the world of human resources, talent management is very important if you plan to retain your talent, okay? So we consider, if you were to think of, I probably should have had the diagram, but if you were to think of career management as one circle and then career development as another circle, that little sliver that overlaps those two circles is considered talent management. So it's the overlap between career management and career development. Career management focuses more on the needs of your company, while career development focuses on the needs of the employee, okay? This is where a lot of companies really fall short. Career management, you are focusing on identifying what your staffing needs are as a company. That's what you care about in career management. Then you're going to determine training and develop gaps around those staffing needs that you're going to have in the future. You're going to create professional development programs, for example, sales training, leadership training, things like that. You're going to match your business needs with the employee's abilities to make sure you got the right people in the right place at the right time to do the right things. And then you're going to provide access to ongoing learning opportunities to support their further career growth. Now, on the flip side, career development is when you're identifying the personal interests and the abilities of each employee, and you help them set their personal career goals, even if that means that it may not be ultimately with your company. You assess their career path, and then you reassess throughout their progression throughout their career. Okay. A lot of companies fall short of this because they're not paying attention to the career development. They only care about career management, if anything at all. The moment you're not taking advantage of that sweet spot that we call talent management, you're doing your employee a disservice, and you're also doing your company a disservice, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have high retention, low retention rates, meaning you have a lot of folks that are leaving the company. So what are some tools that you can use to develop your employees? Well, there's coaching, there's mentorship, job rotation. Job rotation helps really, really well when you have, especially if you have like a college program or anything like that, where you're recruiting really young talent that are like fresh out of school. Job rotation programs work really well because they get to kind of learn everything about the business, and you get to see where they end up thriving most within your organization. Development assignments or projects, those are really great for employees that kind of want to take on more responsibility but don't want to do so long-term, meaning they just want to work on a project basis. And that's something that they can obviously put on their resume. And if they're deciding to stay with the company and they want to get promoted, that's something that they can bring up as well if they were successful with said assignment or projects. Now, performance measurement. Management, I'm sorry. 72% higher profits were realized by businesses with higher than normal employee engagement. So businesses with higher than average employee engagement saw a 72% increase in their profits. Remember that corny ass line that I had about taking care of your employees, and like they would take care of your customers and then all the profits. So yeah, the corny line is always gonna come back. And it is quantifiable, but as a human resource professional, my job is to be able to quantify that number to the CEO, the COO, the CFO, and say, look, if we do these things, your bottom line will increase by this much. Because Otherwise, they don't care. They do not care. Unfortunately, a lot of managers and leaders don't know where to begin with performance management. And sometimes it has to do with people skills when it comes to your manager. So that goes back to employee development, where you have folks in leadership that don't know how to have difficult conversations, don't know how to give feedback, don't know how to be professional with it, and then also don't know how to be objective with their feedback. They're they, for whatever reason, they make things always subjective based on how they feel. So the performance evaluation is probably at the center of performance measurement. And it's the process that involves comparing each of your employees' performance against your standards or the goals that you've set for them. So the overall goal of the performance evaluation is to ensure that the organization and all of its employees are working towards like the overall company-wide goal, the strategic goal. So that means if you're evaluating your employee for whatever you're evaluating your employee for, it must tie back all the way to your overall goals. So the cadence that we typically like to stick with is annual, but that doesn't mean you can't do one-on-one sessions quarterly or mid-year to keep the employee on track. In fact, I would say it's positive reinforcement to do quarterly and mid-year assessments so that they know what's coming on the annual evaluation. When you're delivering your evaluations, you have to keep it professional. You don't evaluate the person, you're evaluating their performance. So you're going to use objective facts, not subjective conclusions. You're going to cite specific examples. This part is super important. And what's so funny to me is that when you do a behavioral interview and you're trying to hire someone, you're recruiting, and you do a behavioral interview, you always have in your behavioral interview questions about, give me an example, and and you expect them to just come off the top of their head, like with an example from a past work experience. You need to keep that same energy in your performance evaluation. Like if you want someone to improve their performance over time, you have to cite specific examples in that behavioral interview. Sometimes that means you have to keep notes. Anytime someone does something really good or something they need to improve on, you just write a little note in their file so that when you get ready, and trust me, it's difficult, especially if you have a large team. I've had like a team of 12 before where it is a lot of work, but it benefits both the employee and your organization overall at the end of the day. Many companies use evaluations to influence decisions on promotions, on future compensation, like increases in compensation for particular employees. They also use evaluations for layoffs. So in the cannabis industry, what you guys are going to see as we mature as an industry in the US and move towards federal legalization, a lot of companies are just going to get swallowed up and acquired, right? In the midst of acquisition, you will experience rounds of layoffs. Sometimes it won't be layoffs at all. Sometimes you'll have two people take from both organizations, take the same role, which is really weird. So unfortunately, you'll see more people at the bottom being laid off than you'll see at the top. But nonetheless, layoffs are going to occur. And what are they going to fall back on? Typically, they're going to fall back on the last annual evaluation. Other things that could be influenced by evaluations, whether or not you're going to dismiss or terminate someone, planning someone's career, and also determining whether or not someone needs further coaching. So performance goals are going to be communicated during the evaluation. This is where you're going to communicate your expectation for your employees' level of performance. And you're going to communicate to them how you're going to measure that performance. So You want all goals that you give your employees to be SMART goals. We all know what SMART goals are. They have beat it into our heads since we were kids. Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound goals, right? So these are the goals that you want to put into someone's evaluation, their annual evaluation. So some examples that I have on the slide are sales quotas, units that are going to be produced, deadlines, and ROI, return on investment. A specific example I'll give you guys for a cannabis business could be revenue per employee in a cannabis dispensary or retail setting. That's a really great KPI that you can use as a goal, overall goal for annual evaluations for your retail employees. Some companies call it basket average. So it's the same thing. Revenue per employee or basket average is the same thing. And really that comes to delivering great service, being able to really educate the customer well in the retail setting and things like that. It also could even relate to having customers come back and wanting to deal with certain bud tenders. For your HR, if you have an HR person on your team, retention rate is a really great goal to hold them to as far as their performance within the organization. Now, if we're talking about cannabis processing or creating edibles, maybe number of units produced on average is a good way to evaluate performance of your production employees. You also, during this whole evaluation process, you want to give your employees the opportunity to evaluate themselves. So typically what you'll do is like at your 2 weeks before your annual, you'll say, hey, we have your annual scheduled. Let's throw it on the calendar. I actually want you to fill out your self-evaluation so that you have it when we meet in 2 weeks. Here's the form. You can start on it, work through it over the next 2 weeks. And so they'll have their self-feedback, their self-evaluation with them when you guys meet together. They'll go over, typically you have them go over theirs first. And then, if you guys are on the same page, there will be some things repeated in your feedback when you go over yours. So that's typically how that works. Sometimes there's some improvement needed, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. Performance improvement happens on a regular basis with everyone. The thing is as a company, as an entrepreneur, you have to have you have to have a policy towards performance improvement. So you can't just out of nowhere start making employees have to have improvement plans, but you don't have anything written about how performance improvement is handled within your company. You have to have a policy for that before you start creating improvement plans. So let me see here. One of the other things that we want to talk about with performance is how employees relate to each other. So if you guys if you have a business in the cannabis industry and you don't have a performance like policy, and there's nothing said about performance improvement, it could send the wrong message to your high performing employees. So if you have a low performing employee that's not hitting their performance measures, your high performing employees are going to start making complaints. They're going to notice that you're not doing anything about the low performing employee. And what are they going to do? Their morale is going to go down and they're going to start performing low because, hey, who's going to say anything? No one. So the warning is like the mildest form of performance improvement action. So a lot of folks start with like the verbal warning, right? And then if action persists, then they progress to the written warning. An employee may need to complete a performance improvement plan, AKA a PIP, to correct performance issues. Typically, it's the direct supervisor who brings up the issue. They document the issue, and then the direct supervisor, tries to develop an action plan on how the employee is going to take said action or behavior and improve it over time. Then they go to their management and make sure that the action plan is approved before they actually present it to the employee. And then they discuss it with the employee. That's the next step. The most important part of performance improvement plans is to follow up to review the progress. Now, suspension, obviously, that's a little bit more serious. It's typically pending some sort of investigation or incident. Typically, depending on the results of an investigation, they may also be terminated. So another one that you don't see a lot is that an employee may be transferred laterally to another team or department that works better for everyone involved. And then sometimes termination is the only appropriate option for employees who commit serious offenses. But like I said, you really have to have a policy in place before you just start taking action, because a lot of folks use the internet and they know the laws now, and some know the laws better than their employers do. So you always want to make sure you have written documentation of how you handle certain situations in the workplace. One thing I want to add, and I kind of talked about this on the recruiting session, is termination and employee exit is just as important as recruiting and onboarding. And I know that sounds weird because like it's negative, like everyone thinks it's negative, which it is. You're losing someone that was a part of the team, but you want to have like a actual standard operating procedure for how you handle exit and separation of employees. Do you have an exit interview? If so, what are the questions on the exit interview? How do you document the answers for the exit interview? Keeping it professional, keeping your records, all of that, making sure you're gathering all of your equipment, whether that be cell phones, laptops, whatever that is, properly and professionally, that you need to have an operating procedure in place for all of that. And a lot of people forget it because no one's thinking about a team member leaving at the beginning of starting their business. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, another quiet crew again. Hopefully you guys got the upload of the PDF for the compensation report. I'm hoping that provides a skeleton of what is acceptable in the cannabis industry as far as certain roles. My contact information is on this screen. I can also put in the chat, but does anyone have like specific questions as far as their business is concerned? This is the part where I would prefer to interact with people and get an understanding of what things that they're struggling with their business.
Hi, this is Raven. I do have a question. Mm-hmm. So as far as I'm for a transportation company, mm-hmm. and we're starting off, rather small, since we're like waiting, like from my understanding, have all the dispensaries gotten their lottery information? And with us trying to get like contracts in, does it make sense? Like when should we start like our hiring process? And should we start with like a full staff as far as like a manager, or should we like keep it in-house?
So the transporters are in a very difficult situation right now. Mm-hmm. The only people, so to put it in perspective, transporters can't obviously sell to the cultivation centers because the cultivation centers already have transportation licenses. So the only people or the only licensees that you can really target as customers would be, like you said, dispensaries, but also craft grows and infusers, right?
Yeah.
So no, the dispensaries don't have their licenses yet. But if you go to the Department of Ag's website, if you go to Illinois Department of Agriculture's website and click
Are you going to upload the link of the list of licensees for?
That's what I was going to do.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a perfect place to start for you to see who your customers would be, is to look at the Department of Agriculture's list of the craft growers and the infusers. And then of course you guys would be on the list because they have their list of transporters.
So I'm uploading that. Give me 1 second. Okay. So it's in the chat. Now, I am a sleuth, okay, right? So I am a stalker, like professionally speaking. That's what I do on a daily basis, right? Right. So the question is, how do we get from that list that I put in the chat to actually finding who's who within the organizations, right? So let me see here. Craft grower. I'm just going to go from the top of this PDF. I feel like 11th level, maybe somebody I know, but let's just use that as an example. So we would go to the Secretary of State, right? Because we want to figure out who is listed on this business in the state of Illinois, right? Because they have to be listed. They can't not be listed. So I'm on the Illinois Secretary of State website. And we want to find the LLC search. I think it's online services. No, it's business services. Yeah. So you click business services and then do corporate LLC search. So this says 11th level Inc. search. Corporate and LLC, just in case we got some S and C corps. 11th level Inc. Well, would you look at that? Oh no, I don't know this person. Okay. So the agent, Trak Patel, which it looks like his name is Shitrak Patel, right? Hopefully this is not their actual houses. If your house is listed on your Secretary of State, I would strongly suggest you take that off. Oh no, it is Keely. Yeah, I do know this. Okay, yes, I do know this person. So Keely is a colleague of mine, right? But so what you're gonna do, what's next? What would you guys do next? You'd go to LinkedIn. Why? Because Instagram and Facebook don't like us, okay? And LinkedIn is where the cannabis industry gets things done. Not sure why this isn't working. I must have cleared my cache. Back. What's going on here? I'm already part of it. What are we doing, Jesus? Sorry, y'all. Getting my life together. Oh my God.
You are just fine. Take your time. I'm taking notes.
Verify. Please solve this current problem. Okay. What? Oh. Okay, makes sense. Someone's already using that email. I'm aware. It's me. What the? LinkedIn about to make me mad. I have no idea why I can't sign in, y'all. But you would find, the point that I'm trying to make is you find Akili. Now, if Akili does not have if you don't have a direct connection with Akili, Akili's going to kill me if he sees this recording. He's like, what the hell? So if you don't have a direct connection with Akili, then you would look for a second connection, which is really easy because if you go to his profile, it'll show who you know that he knows. My suggestion, get the person that you both know to do an intro. A warm intro. We call that a warm. I come from sales. I should probably rewind and let you know why I am a stalker. I come from sales. And so you want to try to get as warm of a handoff as you can to foster some sort of better positioning for you to make the sale or get the contract, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the contract, but because someone you both know is connecting you to, they're more likely to actually answer the message and talk to you, right? Sometimes you got to get a little bit down and dirty. And that means, like for me, when I'm in like super sleuth mode, I have LinkedIn Premium and I have like so many credits where I can message people. Otherwise, if you're not a second or third connect with someone on LinkedIn, you can only send them a connection, like a connect request. And then they may let you do like a personal note, but the note can only be like a certain number of characters. So you can't write them like a paragraph or a narrative or like your biography. You can't do that. So I get like LinkedIn Premium if I know if I know I'm on like a sales blitz, or whatever that I need to contact people I don't know, I will get LinkedIn Premium. So I have so many credits so I can send messages to people that are not my connection. Okay. So what you want to do is go through, and it's a lot of work, but this is building a business. This is what I did when we first LLC'd, try to figure out what all dispensaries were in Illinois, and I stalked them. Another way, if you're feeling real, what's the word? Really ambitious, you could try something like Rocket Reach or Zoom Info. Rocket Reach, you also have to pay for, but it is worth it. And so I'll log in and show you what it does. I don't know why I couldn't log into LinkedIn. Oh, I think I know why. I think I changed my password. Okay, so see, I've been obviously stalking someone and it just took me back to where I was in my last stalking session. So Akili may come up something else actually.
Shawnee, we call that research.
Oh, researching. Yep, researching. Yep. Yep. So yeah, so his business, so Akili be doing the most. He does the most. So he works for Lantern, which is another cannabis company, right? So it says on LinkedIn that he's the head of equity partnerships with Lantern. But he does have a craft grow license. In fact, I believe Akili has a vertical, right? So he's going to kill me if he sees this recording. This will give you as much information as so this is a great way to like get to know someone. He's a doctor of jurisprudence, a JD from Wash U, which is a very good school. He is a genius. He also is very passionate about equity in the cannabis industry. He's been corporate counsel at GTI, things like that. But it says they have 9 emails for him. right? But they say only one is 100% verified. These others, like this was an email, but he no longer works with Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, right? So that's why that doesn't work anymore. So Rocket Reach is decent. It's the same thing where you're paying for, like, I think that these are credits. Yeah, I have 4 credits remaining. So you can get credits. Another one is Zoom Info. And this is what I would consider cost of doing business. This is the cost of trying to figure out who you can kind of go after. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know who all is doing this. But this is kind of, Lucia is another one. I'm not a fan of Lucia. Lucia will take you to someone's LinkedIn and then give you their personal information, but sometimes it's hit or miss. Like when I say personal information, I mean like their email address. I used this when I was working at big corporate recruiting to find who was over talent acquisition at large companies that I was targeting. So that's what you guys will want to do. Like, that's going to be your strategy. You also want to really, so another thing that you may want to do is almost kind of toy with A/B testing on messaging. What do you say when you reach out to people? And instead of contacting everyone at the same time, take 1 or 2, have 2 different types of messaging and see who responds, see what types of messaging works well. And then really having everything together, having your website ready to go, maybe having like some PDFs or digital downloads for people to actually look over as far as your company information and things like that. Any other questions?
I have one additional if no one else has a question. I'm sorry, I don't want to be the one asking my questions. So with me still working like my corporate job, how like your suggestions to navigate working on LinkedIn? Because like on my LinkedIn, I just pretty much have my full-time job. I don't know. I know it's like, changing so much. Is it like politically correct, or should I be advertising?
What do you do?
I
know you're in HR, but what industry?
So I'm leaving healthcare. Actually, we're speaking of Great Resignation. My last day at my current job is Friday. I'm leaving a healthcare consulting firm and going into the cybersecurity space.
Oh no. I would suggest,
and also the company is based out of Austin, Texas. And I don't even know, like, it's legal here, but I don't know how that'll look in Texas with the company based out of a different state.
Do you have a business partner or is it just you?
Yes, I do have a business partner, but I mean, she works in marketing, but not necessarily in a cannabis space either.
So neither one of you guys have anything on your profiles?
No, remotely related. We really don't know what we should do regarding that.
So I would if you're going to be the one doing outreach, I would still keep your regular profile active, but what I've been telling some people to do is to use your company email address and make another LinkedIn account. That's going to be cumbersome, but that will protect like your professional, like I don't want to say professional because I don't mean it that way. Your other line of income, for the time being. So the problem with that is going to be cumbersome because you're going to have to, when you're finding first and second connections, you're still going to have to reach out to them with your personal account the one that has like your healthcare and your cybersecurity information on it, because your new account is not going to have that connection unless you're going to just start requesting people.
I mean, do you think employers like care about that? Like what I don't know.
They do. Yeah, no, they do. It's kind of sickening. Now, excuse me, depending on how cool like your HR or even like your team, your supervisor is, and depending on the type of work that you're doing, like I would say if you're working for government or safe, like public safety or something like that, don't do it. But if you think you may be working for like a really chill organization that's okay with, you doing things outside of, the industry that you're working with them in, I would say you could go for it. It doesn't change like anything regarding like the type of how good of an employee you are. So I worked in tech when I was transitioning, and unfortunately I was working for a very progressive company. So like there was alcohol in the office, like it was a very different situation for me. And so I was very open with what I was doing. In fact, to the point where like they were getting up to date updates on what I like, where I was at with my company, and everyone was like rooting for me. But you're going to have to kind of fill that out, especially going to a new organization to see where they are with that. But you also don't have to there's nothing that you're doing publicly based on the information, based on the strategy I just gave you, that's going to point to you doing a cannabis business. Because you're going to be, when I say people in the cannabis industry on LinkedIn, I'm saying that in the background, in direct messages and the DMs, like people are doing business in LinkedIn. It's not necessarily like, although I will say all of us that are working full-time in the cannabis industry are very active, like making statuses and engaging with one another. But as far as the business is concerned, that's happening behind the scenes. Like no one can see that.
Okay, makes sense.
Does anyone else have any questions?
So we're just new getting into this and getting employees on. What's the best way to find a payroll company to handle that, because we're not equipped?
So you guys are going to want to see who is, have you chosen your bank yet?
No. Not that I'm aware. Maybe my sister has a little more information on that. But she was unavailable tonight. So I am madly writing notes and doing my best to keep up, but she is much more up to date on everything else for details.
So in Illinois, the state chartered banks, we do have safe banking.
Okay.
But the state chartered banks are the ones that are like protected because their money isn't flowing through the federal banking system. So like the credit unions and whatnot that are state chartered, those can handle cannabis accounts. I will say the fees for banking it's very expensive. So you pay like a monthly fee, and I think it's a percentage of the balance or something like that. I'm not sure. I know for a fact a lot of my clients have Credit Union One. There's another one that is like, it's missing. I'm for whatever reason, I can't remember the name of it. Good Tree Capital or something like that. And I think that's it. I know for a fact that they do banking. And so typically when it comes to banking, whoever, like Credit Union One for sure does payroll. If you want to do something on your own, which I have other clients that do this. I have clients that do both, where they have Credit Union One and then they do digital payroll on their own. Like I provide my clients with Gusto, like an account with Gusto, which is like it's like QuickBooks. It's just like QuickBooks.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Gusto is very cannabis friendly. Another company that's cannabis friendly is Work. WURK.
That's what we use in Minnesota for our medical cannabis.
You said what?
We use work in Minnesota for our medical cannabis.
Got it. Okay. Zenefits is also cannabis friendly. Yeah. So I have what do you call it? Partnerships with Zenefits and Gusto. I've had no issues with Gusto whatsoever. Their support team is pretty helpful as well. So I do my benefits administration, timekeeping, all that stuff within the Gusto platform. So I have no complaints as far as Gusto is concerned. But Credit Union One is great as well. I believe they're having a Cinco de Mayo event on May 5th, obviously, at their Lombard location. And so they're going to have a lot of their strategic partners, including us, there. So I would, if you guys are really trying to get an understanding of who is maneuvering through the financial barriers of the cannabis industry in Illinois, I would definitely go to the Cinco de Mayo event for Credit Union One.
That's amazing. How do we attend that?
Let me give you
I can Google. No, don't take time to answer that.
No. I don't know if it's public yet because she's still planning. But she emailed me this week, so I can give you her email. I always give people her email, so she knows that I send. She knows that I send people her way all the time. She's used to it. So her name is Adelia Colon. I'll put it in the chat. And you just reach out to her and tell her that I sent you because I was talking about their Cinco de Mayo event and you guys wanted to learn, what payroll and financial options are available in the state of Illinois as you plan for licensing.
Thank you.
No problem.
So much.
Anyone else? Janelle's been quite quiet. Although I did see your chat, so I'm not even going to front. I saw your chat. I did. Anyone else? Cool. I think that's it. Miss K? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was just going to send the brief advising form. So you all can definitely reach out to Shawnee directly at the contact information that she provided. She's obviously a wealth of knowledge and very kind and willing to assist you at any time. But if it takes some time to get to her or you want to set up like a one-on-one type of brief advising, then you want to contact us at cannabis@thetrepschool.com. I just put the brief advising form into the link. So once you click there, you'll be able to answer a series of questions to let us know exactly what you're looking for so we can direct you to the best resources. And yeah, that's it. Oh, you don't have the unmute. Hold on. No worries. I got you. Let me get to you. I didn't see you for a second. There you go, Janelle. What you need to say?
Okay, so hey y'all, hey.
Hey.
I'm I'm not really all that quiet, but this was really refreshing, very informative, great information, especially for me to start in the business. I really appreciate it. And that's really all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janelle, for coming. For anybody who is just like trying to understand where they are as far as understanding the cannabis industry, this is definitely everything in regard to building your team. But if you're still trying to understand how to actually enter the market, where to get started to determine if you're a social equity applicant in the state, if you have other things that you qualify under, you want to reach out to cannabis@thetrepschool.com. It's all in the chat. You can just go right to the form to submit. So I would save the link to do that, or you can send us an email and then we'll respond essentially with the link. So everything we want to provide you is based off of the information that you would be providing in those answers. And then that way we can get you the best resources. We do have attorneys on staff. We have individuals very versed in the cannabis industry in Illinois since the very, very, very tiny birth of it. It's not that old, but since the very tiny birth of it. So just to help you navigate kind of what's going on, because it change all the time. Look, they ain't got it together, but we together. So it's the staying on it that the technical assistance is trying to provide you guys, is how on it you have to be. And if you don't always get it straight from us, then you can at least get the tools from us to understand how you stay on the changes in this industry as it grows. And like Shawnee pointed out to you very many times, very nicely, as it becomes federally legal, because it looks like that's the direction that our government is moving. So yeah, if you guys don't have any other questions, it was great to have you. And we're going to be back next month for another session. So it's going to be another HR session. Do you have the topic right offhand? I can take a look if you don't, Shawnee.
I don't remember. Let me see here.
I got the Zoom.
Let's see, is it May 11th? Nope.
It's May 10th. And the subject is, it's just loading.
Oh, no, that's me.
It's workplace safety and OSHA. So this is very
OSHA.
important.
I'm so glad. Is it May 10th?
It's May 10th.
Child, let me go ahead and put Mary on this because I totally forgot about this. Ooh, thank you. Because OSHA trap. May 10th, Tuesday, 6 to 8.
Is that not a Wednesday?
It's a Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday. Okay.
11th or the 10th?
I have it scheduled as the 10th, but I will reach out to you, and then you guys will get like a Zoom blast kind of email to let you know that it's available for you to register for again. So we'll confirm that date for you soon. And then we also, after this, you'll be receiving a survey. So thank you for coming, but please let us know what you felt about it. And when you do that, you basically are giving us feedback, because we are not know-it-alls. So let us know, if there's anything that that you would like added to what we're providing, or any other information you want to know. So I appreciate you guys.
I'm sorry, it says the 10th.
It does. It's a Tuesday. Everything's fell on a Wednesday so far. So I was just like, But yes, it says the 10th, which is a Tuesday. Okay. And that would be 6 to 8. All right. So any other questions before we get out of here, guys? If no, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Again, I thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.